Today's episode all started when our team discovered Casey on TikTok, who was educating her audience on the practices and policies of Etsy that are driving authentic, handmade crafters like herself off the platform. As we dove into this topic, though, we discovered some alarming statistics, including the fact that small, genuine artisans only accounted for 30% of Etsy's 108% growth in the past few years. In this episode, Casey pulls back the curtain on the platform and how far they've strayed from their original purpose of being a handmade marketplace. But it's not all doomsday talk, as we're quick to turn the conversation into how creators can continue pulling a profit from their passions and customers can scout out authentic handmade goods. So let's dive in. Welcome to Popup Advice, the place where masters of entrepreneurship, leadership, and e-commerce reveal their secret tips and tricks for becoming the top dogs in their field. These candid conversations will give you exclusive strategies that turn your good idea into a great success. Let's dive in. Okay, so we're here with Casey H. Wilkinson. She's a crafter and creator, and we came across her TikTok the other day, and everyone on our team was like, we have got to speak to this lady because just how you presented everything was just like struck a chord. And so, Casey, why don't you just give us a bit of an introduction of who you are and what you do?
Okay, yeah, I'm an artist and illustrator from upstate New York. I have a BFA in graphic design, but didn't really like getting into the commercial side of things quite so much. I'm a little bit more playful. I like to refer to myself as kind of like a creature of the in-betweens. I have just a big love for things that don't fit neatly into boxes. So the natural world is like a huge inspiration for me because anytime we try to classify anything, it always defies classification. Like, there are always ways in which things don't quite match up with each other.
We came across what you were doing because of kind of what's been happening at Etsy. And this was total news to us. We didn't really understand kind of the backstory of what has been happening with Etsy and its creators. So could you run us through your experience with Etsy and maybe, how you started there, what you were selling, and then the gradual shift that's been occurring?
Yeah, I started back in 2009. I had a kid who was preschool aged, but was, in daycare. I was working a 45, 50, 60-hour work week doing retail lumber sales, selling paint, plumbing, and electric, and lighting supplies. And I had heard about Etsy, and I'm like, well, I do art stuff. I'll start, doing some illustrations of birds, selling prints, and then I started doing some cards as well too, and the cards did pretty well, and so I kept going on that. And over the period of time that I was at Etsy, it did grow, and I did recommend it to a lot of people, and I did direct people that way, and that's part of what's kind of sad about what happened with it. They went public in 2015, and that was kind of unsteady moment for us as well too, but shortly before that they had started allowing dropshipping on. And that changed the game quite a bit for a lot of people that were hand packing their own orders. And the kind of rep that Etsy had at that point was that when you bought something from somebody, that you would have kind of a lovingly hand packed thing. You might get a handwritten note on it. There was that kind of relationship that you were having with your shop that you were buying from, that this was a little bit closer than just driving through a McDonald's drive-through and ordering the number 2, right? Yeah. Didn't just get thrown into the bag. I tried to do a little bit of drop shipping because I did see a hit in traffic and in sales because people were rushing on to do these sort of things because they considered it like a passive income source. And unfortunately, handmade and passive income don't really mesh up with each other.
Yeah.
You can't passively hand make things. So Etsy's rep, well, it stayed as a handmade marketplace while everybody who was shopping there thought they were getting handmade things. The stuff slowly started changing to not handmade. At first, it was production partners that were local businesses. So if I got cards printed at a print shop down the street, that was allowed, right? As long as I was packing my own orders still. And then it turned into any drop shipper. So you could even buy cards drop shipped from places as well too. So I
Right.
had to shift. That was the only way I was able to keep going. And there were plenty of times where I could have quit, and I did see other makers quit in the process of things and maybe even just stop trying to sell things at all, sometimes stop doing things at all, and that was probably some of the saddest parts of it. But the sad part of it now is hearing the customers that shop on Etsy expecting to get something handmade, and instead they're getting stuff that's being resold from like Amazon and Wish and Temu, and they're finding out about it 10 days later that they paid a markup of 3, 4, 5, 10 times the amount that they saw it on another site. And kind of like, I think some of the final issues with it were like forcing free shipping on stores. Like if you did not offer free shipping, you would get downranked in the search. If you and drop shippers could just factor it right in. Uh, if you didn't respond to customers in 24 hours, regardless of whether it was actually a customer contacting you in the messaging form, it could be somebody insulting your work. You would get dinged, and that would also drop you out of like the Star Seller
Really?
program. There were a couple of different times with ad programs where you would either have your items automatically entered into it and you would have to go turn them off, or past a certain amount of sales, you were automatically put into their ad program. And
Oh,
that's tough when you drive your own traffic more so than get it from the search. So
you're not kidding.
it was just a bunch of little things all stacked up on top of each other. And at a certain point, for a lot of people, it became unsustainable. And that's what happened with me. Is I can't respond to people in 24 hours. I have 2 kids. I have a dog that's trying to go outside right now.
Yeah.
Those sort of things are tough for small makers and single person run shops, or very small run shops where you only have 2 or 3 people, maybe, responding in 24 hours. If you're doing a lot, is hard. It's almost like it felt like a losing battle for sellers. It felt like we were constantly being asked to give up more in order to attract more customers.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, people want the fast shipping, people want the free shipping. And I'm like, yes, people want that, but you can't have that with handmade. It just doesn't work that way.
So, in response to these challenges that you've mentioned, how have you managed to keep going? What changes in strategies or alternatives have you found?
I got my own site. It's in early stages on that as well. I'm currently on Ko-fi at the moment because it's actually a really good integrated little system there and very community based. It's just not centrally searchable the way that Etsy is. So like customers can't go on there and just find random stuff.
Right.
It's more driving your own traffic. So it's kind of like a good like kind of catch-all home base at the moment. I have heard some good things about Go Imagine. Taking a quick look at them as well too, because they do charity work with the bulk of their profit as well too. And it looks like they're things, they might be a good alternative as well. There are certain things that we look for. My huge red flag is that they won't let you link off site.
Oh,
So like
interesting.
Etsy, you can't put your own homepage in your Etsy shop. You can't put a link to another page of yours that sells something different that they don't allow on Etsy inside a listing or on your page. And that meant that any traffic I drove into Etsy couldn't go anywhere else for me,
So there's
and
no ownership
I
of
feel
it.
like that's a measure of trust, that it's like, if you can trust your makers enough to have the ability to leave and take their customers with them, then you're more likely to keep your makers,
Right.
and that's the back and forth. That's the partnership. There needs to be like trust both ways. We all know that platforms can go bad. We've seen it happen with eBay. Amazon had their own handmade marketplace. We've seen DeviantArt try some sketchy stuff. Even Redbubble and TeePublic right now with their back end fees that they're kind of adding onto things, or explaining things that they've always done but didn't tell anyone. So we're kind of hesitant. There's a big level of trust that comes with directing our friends, family, neighbors, fellow artists that, some of which are struggling harder than I am. Like, I'm not going to send them to a site to sell on if I think that site is going to eventually undercut them, and they're going to have a bunch of sunk cost in it.
Well, and I had heard the mention of the fee structure at Etsy. Maybe we could dive into that, because obviously, you're running
It's
your own
complicated.
business. This is what I've heard.
You need like a master's degree for it. Yeah.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, there's a 20-cent listing fee, and that your listing goes for 3 months, and then it might auto renew itself if you don't uncheck the box. And normally when you start the listing, it's set to auto renew. And so if you have hundreds of items in your shop and you get kicked with those auto renew fees, those were something that artists were getting and artisans were getting hit with. Then there's the back end fee of, I forget what it's at now, because it was at 6%, and I think they just raised it. It's somewhere in that range.
Okay.
There's credit card processing fees, which are usually somewhere in between like 1% and 3%. Then there's the ad fees. So like if you had any ads turned on, or if you were automatically enrolled in an ad program, you would be paying per click on those ads, regardless of whether you got a sale or not.
Oh, wow.
So there are times where people sold something and the margin that it took out of the sale was 20, 30, 40%, right? Like because of the stack up of everything all together. You almost need a spreadsheet with everything already plugged into it with formulas in order to figure out what your pricing should be to counteract all those fees and add in the free shipping in order to be ranked up high enough search. Because if somebody goes searching for an otter greeting card, right, and I'm on page 20, that's not going to get sold.
Yeah.
And especially if mine's $1 more expensive than the dropshippers. And the people that are buying clip art from somewhere, this I painted,
Yeah.
I have done custom work for people occasionally where somebody's just like, hey, I'd love for this to have this little thing in there. I'm like, it's doable, right? You can't get a big corporation to do that. And that's kind of one of the benefits of shopping handmade in the first place.
Right. Yeah.
That fee structure is a killer. It is much easier on platforms that have like a flat rate fee on things, or a monthly like subscription fee for sellers.
Yeah.
Because that's easy to calculate. But for the most part, artists we're not rich people, and we're not comfortable. We're struggling out here, right? Like I'm a little bit more comfortable than most. That's why I feel comfortable kind of like taking the time to make statements like this, taking the time to like try to educate customers a little bit more so, because it's actually part of my mission. It's a value system situation here, that I love my people and I see them struggling and they don't have time to fight for themselves. So I'm going to fight a little bit for them since I have a little extra time. Not a lot though.
Kind of going on to like platforms, because I feel like there are so many things we're speaking to here. We're speaking to, customers, and like really being willing to go that extra mile to actually support and buy from the local artisans, and understanding maybe it costs the extra $1, maybe it costs the extra $10, maybe it doesn't include the free shipping, and maybe it takes longer to create, but you're actually getting just a higher quality product overall. And so making sure they recognize that.
I was gonna like kind of expound upon that too, is like that's actually one of the reasons why I like connecting with people on social media and connecting with just humans. I don't care if they're gonna buy from me. I think finding people and kind of like making those relationships and buying from people that you have kind of gotten to know is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Like business doesn't have to be like kind of like a dirty word, and marketing doesn't have to be a dirty word when it's just people talking to each other about what we want and then kind of like providing those needs in an exchange. I just want to like help people communicate with other people. And that's kind of what it boils down to largely, is to like encourage that sense of those relationships and building community. And that's what I do on TikTok. And that's what I do here, and that's why I try to speak for the artists and crafters, because I feel like we're missing that. But there's something really kind of like lovely about going into a shop and having the person know your name immediately, and maybe be like, I know you always get this, but we have this new thing and it's in that same kind of vein. Do you think you might want to try it? that is a level of customer service that you can only get from people knowing you, right? Like from being there more often and from taking just a little bit more time to do things.
I always say we live in the air. We're all just carnivores for connection. It's just like we're scraping it from wherever we can.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, like, and that's why I give advice to young artists. And the number one thing is to find a community. Like, find people that are doing something similar to what you're doing. People that are kind and supportive and don't have like the crazy competition going on, because that's also a thing that happens with survival, is that you forget that the people you're shoulder to shoulder with are the best people to learn from.
Right.
I don't need to fight them. I don't need to undercut them. Nobody benefits from that. I need to learn from them. They can learn from me, and there's room for all of us.
And so kind of on that trail line of advice, what would you suggest to creators right now who are trying to stick with it but might be hitting some opposition?
Keep working. Don't stop. Rest, don't quit. Don't let naysayers stop you. Like, if anything, if you're short on motivation, use spite, because it works. You don't want to do that all the time. You'll burn yourself out on it. But if you can't get it from like that point, that really good heart point of like, I'm communication and relationship and I'm not feeling it, but I can at least prove people wrong. That works. Become inescapable has been like my new mantra. Mm-hmm. I picked it up from a comic book publisher on Twitter, the publisher of Iron Circus Comics, Iron Spike, out of Chicago. It says, become inescapable is the only thing that she can still give as advice to people, because markets keep changing. Like, being able to sell online keeps changing. The publishing game keeps changing. The comic game keeps changing. The only thing that she can really tell you is to relentlessly post where you're comfortable. If you think you're talking too much about it, you're probably not. Be annoying. Like, it's like, if you're worried you might be annoying people, double down and do more. So I've been using my community a little bit for that. And we've been finding a lot of little local community, opportunities as well too, places that we might be able to sell in person at markets and that sort of thing. And that's why, like, getting out in person, learning how to talk about your work, becoming inescapable about it, and relying upon your community and feeding back into that community. You get the help you give if you've got good people.
Yeah, so true. And you've kind of blown up on social media. Like, how have you been able to kind of leverage that to continue?
These people are all following me. They're going to be vastly disappointed. Now I'm going to go back to being just the same exact weirdo that I've always been. I think right now I'm actually, like, this quarter of the year, like, I've been doing quarterly shop updates for, like, I had 3 in a row, which is actually really good for, somebody that's, ADHD. I've been setting deadlines. I've been making 10 to 12 different card designs every quarter, along with matching stickers and some other things on top of that. And doing rewards for my Ko-fi supporters as well, too, keeping on time with that as well. And so this quarter, I was like, I don't know if I want to start a studio list for this quarter. And then I realized that I've got a lot of preparing to sell in person is a lot of, like product making, display making, logistics sort of situation, kind of like building some marketing stuff for the underside of the business, for like posting to social media, making that a little bit easier for myself. Getting myself set up so that people can help me if I do need help. So like my sticker storage is all organized and numbered, so that if I do take it to a market, that my husband can even open that box and find the sticker somebody's looking for, because he doesn't know all 55 designs that are in there. I do. Or my kids, like if one of them wants to help. So It just works out to be good that this happened right around this time. I had some sort of inclination that post might do some walking, because one of my community members said, I just stitched this video and it's doing numbers, you guys might want to hop on it. So I hopped on it and mine just went right past theirs. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. And they're like, no. This is exactly why I told you guys, so that one of you could so that we could all ride it. Right. And, It's been great. We had a Discord that we had set up originally, the group of us to potentially do like a future podcast or like video stream, like roundtable with artists and creators. So I figured, hey, let's open that to anybody that's hurting for community, right? So that you can find a link for on my homepage. It's called Art Around and Find Out. It's just another way to kind of like share that sort of information that can help us all, right? And to commiserate about things, to have a space to vent that's not out in the public either, and have each other's backs, you know? And that can be the difference between continuing and quitting some days. And I think having more creators around is a good thing. Yeah, so I've been doing a little bit of that, a little bit more community building, a little bit trying to get out in person, and have had some really interesting things happen in a matter of like 3 days. You know, just not being shy about it, allowing myself to take my own advice of becoming inescapable.
Well, and I think, as you said, like it has to come from the firsthand experience. And so you're in such a powerful position to be speaking about it because it's like you're in it, right? So there's just so much.
I've been struggling with it for some time. I mean, I'm lucky that I'm not as close to like the bare bones of survival as some people, so I've been able to weather it,
Yeah.
but that also makes me capable of seeing all the shipwrecks around me, right? Like I might still be floating in the harbor, but there's a whole bunch of stuff that happened and good people that made beautiful stuff. And it's sad, and it's sad to see customers getting hurt as well too, because I've had it drummed down deep into me that customer experience is a huge thing, you know, like in early days of TikTok, I did videos of like what working retail, like what customer service and retail taught me about running my own business, right? It's easy to sell somebody else's stuff because you're not as committed to it, you know, like you didn't put the effort into it. And so if it doesn't work out or somebody's not satisfied, it's not personal.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
on the other hand of things, it is highly personal when it's your own work, right? Because
Yeah.
there's nobody else to blame. Right? So it's a lot of responsibility, and getting that confidence bridge to do that and to talk about it and to learn and to even learn why yourself. Because a lot of times as creatives, we're not entirely sure of the message until it's down on paper and we've had a chance to really think about it.
This is so true. Yeah.
But that's, you know, like that's the nature of the game. And if you have other people that know the nature of the game, they can help you figure out the why, and then to communicate that to other people, because that's really what ultimately I think does sell handmade. And I think it does sell just about everything, is the why. Is somebody has a need, right? Like if everybody needed to wear clothes and there was just one style of dress or pants or whatever, they'd just buy that, right?
Yeah.
But there isn't, you know. The why is how you want to present yourself to the world, right? And that's how people sell clothes, is I'm going to speak to a certain type of people that want to present themselves in a certain way, right? And that's my audience, that's my customers, that's my community, actually. You know, like these are the people that I want to help feel better about how they move through life. And that's kind of it. It's just you know, you keep going with figuring out your why and figuring out how to communicate it. And the better you can do that, the easier it is to show up. The easier it is to show up online, the easier it is to show up in person, the easier it is to talk to people about your work and have them fall in love with it the same way that you do.
Well, this has been absolutely terrific, Casey. And for people who are wanting to connect with you and see what you do, like what's the best way for them to get in touch?
You can find my website's caseyhwilkinson.com. It's got Linktree on it. It's got all my socials down at the bottom of it as well, too. I'm on TikTok under the same name. It's the Casey H. Wilkinson, where the H can stand for anything from hot sauce to hachi machi. I don't know. There's links on there where to find where I sell on other things. There's a link for the Art Around and Find Out Discord on there as well, too. So if you do want to like chat with me or something, you know, like, or ask me why I use something, or like it, you know, if I've ever used a different platform, you can join in on there and ask me directly there. But yeah,